Thank you all for joining us today. Our panel is called Muslim Voices, and we are bringing forth for Muslim women in academic spaces who've all been involved in researching the experiences of Muslim American students. You've probably had an opportunity to take a look at the video, and if you haven't, that's quite okay as well. I'll get us started. My name is Dr. Noor Ali, and I teach at Northeastern University in the Graduate School of Education. And for the purposes of this panel, I think what's significant is that in about 2017, when I was writing my dissertation, I conducted an exploration of the experiences of Muslim American women and found at that time, it was a narrative inquiry. And I found out at the time that very quickly recognized that there was no theoretical framework present to study the experiences of this group. With that said, what I did back in 2017 was use critical race theory as my framing for studying the narrative experiences of Muslim American women. And one of the things that I put forth at the time was the need for a theoretical framework that would capture the nuanced experience of this demographic while recognizing that it is by no means a monolithic experience. And I built a case for it by saying that CRT, when it first set out, has its tenets of CRT that folks are familiar with, but soon after the development of the framework, we saw subsets under CRT come forth, such as Lat Crit or Fem Crit, Queer Crit, Disability Crit, Tribal Crit, what have you. And all of these subsets that emerged under critical race theory were putting forth the same case, which is this particular group that we are exploring, the experiences of, is not quite captured under the larger umbrella of CRT. And there is something particular, whether it's a nuance or a historical experience or whatever the case may be, that is very specific to this demographic. And a theoretical framing becomes important because it sets forth for us the language for discourse to be possible. It sets forth parameters. It acknowledges that something exists and therefore should be explored. And when there's missing language around an entire demographic or an entire group of people, it's in a way invalidates the experiences of those people, or they have to borrow other framings, other language, other discourse that may not be completely applicable to themselves. So with that, fast forward from 2017, 4 years later, I had developed the micro-theoretical framework, which I called MusCrit, and for exploring the experiences of Muslim American folks. It has 6 tenets that I think are really important. Some of them are similar to critical race theory, and some of them are not. So one, for example, that is similar to CRT is the importance of counter narratives or counter storytelling. Because when people don't tell their stories or are not allowed to tell their stories are told by someone else. And that kind of hijacking of narrative or whitewashing of narrative is very detrimental to the narrative itself. So that's something that's similar with CRT. Other tenets of CRT, of MusCrit, that are a little bit different from CRT itself are, one of them is the historical, political, and social implications on trends of Islamophobia today. That would be one. 2 that I find really important and are going to be relevant today are identifiability. In particular for this demographic, identifiability is mostly a choice, which is you can choose to be identifiable as Muslim or not. If you are keeping a Muslim sounding name, if you're dressing a particular way, if you're eating a particular way, if your acts of worship are public or not. Those are choices that individuals make with regards to being identifiable with this group or not. And identifiability plays a key role with any microaggressions or acts of oppression that are then imposed upon you. If you were passing as not Muslim, those experiences likely will not be yours, as opposed to when you don't pass off as not Muslim, or if someone is mistaken for being Muslim, which we saw, for example, with the Sikh population after 9/11. They were often mistaken for being Muslim and treated in a very oppressive manner. So identifiability becomes a really critical thing. And this kind of all started out when I was thinking about myself, and I know I've shared this experience previously at the symposium, and some of you might have heard it, which is that when I was in the doctoral program, it was only in my 4th course that I realized what I was doing in every introduction post that I made in the course. In every intro post, I would say, hey, I'm Noor. I'm originally from Pakistan, and I work at a faith-based school here in Massachusetts. And it was in my 4th course that I first identified what was happening there. The necessity of me saying originally from Pakistan is categorizing and making safe me now. Like, I was this then, but I am not that now. I am now here. So this kind of cleaning out that we have to do for acceptability is something that is critical to the experience. The other thing that is really important was me identifying as working at a faith-based school, as opposed to saying I work at a Muslim school. And it was in my 4th course that I realized I was doing that very subconsciously. But we all know that things that we do as BIPOC individuals in particular, subconsciously, are a result of what has been normalized in mainstream and what is expected of BIPOC folks to lie low, or those types of things. And my reasoning for this, as I think back, was if I said I belonged to a Muslim school, I would immediately be discounted as my experience being irrelevant to everyone else who was in the room, right? Because how many other people would there be over there who worked at a Muslim school? None, except me at that time, right? However, when I say that I work at a faith-based school, I'm almost creating a relevance for my experience. I'm crafting a space for myself where I'm saying, hey, listen to me. I've got something that may have something relevant or common with your experience, other folks who might be working at parochial schools or non-public school spaces or those types of things. The bigger epiphany, of course, at that point was, I was 36 years old at the time, and I was like, wait a second, I'm 36. I've birthed 2 children without epidurals. I've got 2 masters. I'm in a doctoral program, which one might think is intellectually safe. Yet I'm making this choice as an adult. And it made me wonder what the 16-year-olds and the 11-year-olds who are coming from Muslim families, what their experience is like in terms of choosing or not choosing to be identifiable as Muslim in mainstream spaces or otherwise. So identifiability is really a key tenet of MusCrit. And then another one is the renderings of gender are really important when it comes to the Muslim experience. And my premise over there is that the stereotypes that apply to Muslim women are very different from the stereotypes that apply from Muslim men. And I do recognize that I'm drawing a binary over here. And I'm drawing that binary based on, what my observation has been. Muslim women are always seen in need of liberation, in need of being saved, in need of freedom, in need of air and breathing space. And the white West will often take upon itself the duty and obligation of providing that saviorism. And Muslim men, on the other side, are more often than not, mostly, if they're identifiable, going to be seen as aggressive. prone to terrorism, barbaric even, not in need of saving, but in fact being the ones that you save the world from. So there is this sharp dichotomy that is drawn on this gender binary line in the experiences of Muslim folks. Fast forward when the writings around MusCrit got published, the year that followed, I had several emerging scholars reach out to me saying, hey, I was interested in, exploring the experiences of Muslim American folks. I've come across your micro-theoretical framework. Here's what I'm thinking. And so that, as we all know in this room, that's like a thing of beauty for anyone who was in scholarship or research, right? Like it's such a nerd moment when someone reaches out to you and they're like, hey, I read your work, because you're like, wow, somebody else read it other than myself. That's pretty cool. So what we were able to do after that was hold a virtual symposium with lots of people who were either using MusCrit or were exploring the experiences of Muslim American people. And by doing that, we were really building this community and this affinity space around scholarship that prior to this didn't have a language for the discourse to be kind of, to take place. So what's really exciting for us over here in this room today is that I have three scholars with me, and they're going to wave at you right now and then introduce themselves to you. There you go. You see them waving on the screen. And what each of them did and is doing is exploring the experiences of Muslim American people. But what's really fantastic about the experience is that all four of us identify as Muslim American women and are researching the demographic that we affiliate with. And that experience of data collection, analyses, conversation is, it's a very dynamic experience because our positionalities are so centered, regardless of the non-monolith intersectional spaces that we may be occupying in our work and our families, in our lived experiences. But there is a keen insight into what the participants say to us and what we're able to bring forth to the table. So I'll stop here because I know that I have three other panelists with me today who would share with you their experiences, and then we'll open it up to any questions, comments, or whatever. So take it away. I've forgotten the order that we did this in before. Can I ask Carolyn maybe to get us started?
Sure. So I was taking notes so I could stay on track, but yes. So I come to this work from a different angle, but I will say, I want to pick up on the point that where she had mentioned that we were contacting her. I was so excited to find MusCrit, you can't even imagine. I was struggling with my notes and trying to put together, I was like, I know CRT applies, how can I make this come together? And I would do searches every so often, and I found like a dissertation, and I was like, well, this sounds like it's getting there. But when I came across MusCrit, it was exactly like, it was like a, cheesy moment, like, oh. So yes, I took a chance and contacted her, and that's how I came to this group. But so my experience is very different from Noor's, and I'm coming to it as a convert to Islam. Many years ago, I've been Muslim for over 34 years. I come from a Black father, Black American father, white American, German Anglo mother. None of my family was Muslim except for me. I married young. I have now 7 children and 3 grandchildren. So I come to the experience of some of the tenets of MusCrit as both a teen convert, experiencing high school as a Muslim, and knowing what that was like, being teased and all of a sudden instantly racialized. I mean, I was already a mixed race person in a time where it wasn't necessarily as common on the East Coast. But I was used to that. But once the scarf went on, all of a sudden I was seen as the foreign other. And so MusCrit's been my life. Like this is real. So I went through that. Why are you wearing a diaper on your head? What is that rag you're wearing? And being treated as some foreign other from people I went to school with. We didn't move a lot. I knew these people from kindergarten. And noticing the Muslims, I didn't know there were other Muslims I went to school with, and they're kind of hiding from me. So because they don't want to be outed. Fast forward to having children in the public school. So we don't have, until just recently, there's a private school project starting, but until now we haven't had the option of a private Islamic school. All of the private parochial schools are Christian, Catholic, and some Muslims do choose those. But the public schools, going through with my children, being a very active, hands-on parent, and she was talking about choosing identifiability. I think of a conversation I had with one of my children, and he said, well, whether, he could have passed as Latino, which is the majority of the children there, or maybe even, white with question. But he said, like, me coming to school with hijab on kind of outs him. So I think about that. So some children are outed by their parents, right? Whether they want to be or not. And then at some age, maybe they were okay with it, but then maybe they're not anymore. Can I just be a normal teenager, normal child? And the boys, like she said, are not necessarily identifiable otherwise. And I have 5 daughters, so they've all chosen to wear hijab on their own, contrary to popular belief, and they've had different experiences. And I've heard of, the internalized racism among their peer groups and calling each other names for fun. So there's been so many experiences, and I just wanted to make this also my doctoral research. It's been my life, but I'm working on my dissertation and trying to capture this so that I can bring it, into awareness to, not only to academia and, the community, non-Muslim community, but to the Muslim community, because I feel like the parents don't always know, especially we have a large immigrant population that didn't go to school here, that doesn't know what it was like, doesn't know what the children are up against, and sometimes reacts by just pulling the kids out and doing homeschool. Or now with the new Islamic school, a lot of people are trying to put their children there, which I don't see a problem with, but the school's not really established quite yet. And if you're worried about academics, that could be an issue. So anyway, there's so many issues, so many things to explore. This is like an exciting opportunity, and I don't want to keep talking forever, but just to give you a feeling of where I'm coming from as a, biracial, Black, white, Muslim, kind of from the inside out, from high school to children to now my grandchildren are in school, and my son's taking a different approach by not really talking so much about them being Muslim, and maybe they're white passing with curly hair. And it's, I'm just the mom, so, I have my own opinions, but it'll be interesting to see how that unfolds. And I really want to contribute to my local community and the community at large. So anyway, I'll stop talking because there's so much more to hear from the other panelists.
Fatima, Koura, can you go next, maybe?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I want to also mention how I met Dr. Ali. I am actually a doctoral student at Northeastern University, and I was searching about Muslim American women and their experiences. And then I came across Dr. Ali's work and MusCrit, and I realized that she's a professor at the same university I'm attending. And we got connected through the university and through her work. I'm currently, like I mentioned, a student at Northeastern University. I'm doing my work, my research on the experiences of undergraduate Muslim American women. My previous studies has been on interviewing and learning about the experiences of women who wear the headscarf, the hijab, in the workplace. And I currently want to use my position academically to uplift their voices. My journey doing this has not been linear and has taken deep changes as socio-political changes have happened. As a autoethnographer, I try to find the balance of being a member of my community as a Muslim woman, as an action researcher. I find it like I'm deeply privileged to be an insider. I love when I talk to my participants and can relate on religious practices and sometimes language, food, cultural values. That being part of that space gives me sense of ease when it comes to speaking with them, understand their experiences. For my current research, understand the experiences of undergraduate Muslim American women, I have great reception from participants, but at the same time, right now, learning from their experiences, being on college campuses is quite different than mine. I came into this research, my own lens and my own perspectives. My first week of college, September 11 happened, and the post that tragic event changed the trajectory of my college experience. And at the moment, the political shifts and changes that are taking place, and specifically the tragic situation in Palestine, university students, speaking with them has been sensitive and contentious. Students are afraid to speak about their position and their experiences on college campuses. And for someone like me who values the lived experiences, has made me rethink about my own positionality in my community and how I can use my position to create comfort and trust. Notably, because of the way Islamophobia has functioned for so long in the literature of Muslim women and the context of Muslim women, there is a trend in dehumanizing and invalidating experiences. And the evolving nature of this study has led me to be more compassionate and honestly take a step back and
to meet these Muslim women, and they're pretty amazing.
And observe more than probe Muslim student experiences. And students at the moment are experiencing a loss. And this goes back to my understanding of how to humanize my participants and in the moment trying to create connections with them and create knowledge rooted in prioritizing their agency as Muslim American women. Thank you.
Thanks, Fatima. Seyma, you're next.
Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Fatima Seyma Kizil. I'm coming from Syracuse University, and I'm about to finish my dissertation, hopefully. And when I searching the theories about the Muslim Americans, I found Noor Ali's book, and I said excited. So I want to dig deeper and make connection with her. And luckily, we have been like as a good team working together. I've been thinking, where should I start to like explain my story, because it's kind of long story, but I can start, I guess. I am coming from Turkey, so my hometown is Turkey, and I've been here since 2016. And in Turkey, it's kind of complicated issues around wearing a headscarf when I was in college. I think it started in 1996, and it's been continued. And until in my last year, like as my junior year, it's been prohibited to wear headscarf. So I have been saying myself, okay, I'm going to school because I have to go, but after that, I will not take it off my hijab anymore time. And then when I graduate, there was no job opportunity because you cannot work with hijab. And I opened my own kind of education space to teach kids and adolescents with my husband. And after that, I awarded the scholarship opportunity from Ministry of Education and came to the Syracuse University for language class, and then master program, and then PhD. And since my background story, it's like there was a prohibition to wear hijab and some issues around that in my home country. When I came to the US, I feel like it's kind of like the freedom country. So I shouldn't have any problems. And I can say I don't have any issues because like I feel like free, and I enjoy with that freedom. Like I could able to pray in anywhere, like in my office, and nobody says, like they didn't say anything wrong. And through the years, when I started to connect it with other Muslim women, they start to saying some stories to me, especially from like the other states of the America. Some of my friends, like the Turkish friends, they have to take it off their hijab because they get a lot of like the discriminations and issues from like students and something. And I started to connect it with the Muslim community in here. And I see that I feel like I was kind of naive, like I didn't see anything. And through the years, I started to dig deeper, and I started to work with my own advisor, Marcel Hedix. She is very good on like kind of community engaged scholar. And I started to questioning, I should find my own community. And I work with them. And I started to engage it with the Islamic Community Center and with the adolescents. And I see that they got a lot of experience, like as similarly as I got when I was in high school, when I was in middle school in Turkey. And when I tell my stories, they surprised because like I was coming like a Muslim country kind of, I shouldn't get that experiences. And then I decided to open a space for them to talk and discuss these kinds of issues. And we have been doing the book club for 3 years in the Islamic Community Center with adolescents. And I'm working on like the MusCrit theory, and I understand how the MusCrit tenets, I can see from them. And I also see how the Muslim American population in America, it's diverse and intersectional, and those intersectionalities have a lot of issues on Muslim Americans. For example, it's like, I can say that like a Muslim American woman has a lot of issues because they discriminated and they say like they have to be saved. On the other hand, they also had to face the issues Muslim American boys also get, like the terrorist or bomber. And it's very complicated, and I feel so excited to observe those issues in the middle of the Islamic Community Center. And it put me a lot, and I about to finish my studies. And how many minutes I've been talking? So, and yeah, and I think it's very important to work with communities as scholar. And it's also very important to work with the school as a mother, because I am a mother of 2. And one of my son is going to kindergarten, and for 3 years. And each year we started to do some activities with his school, and his teacher told me that I never get any Muslim mom or father that doing these activities with my class, because I want to teach the diversity to my students, but I don't know. And I didn't have any like a Muslim parents that they come and introduce their culture, their faith. And I feel lucky to do these activities every year, especially in the like the Ramadan Eid time for my son, also for my son's classroom. And I feel like connection and dialogue with the school communities, home communities, and Islamic communities is very important. I feel like it's like a 3 connection is very important to follow the next step. And I think I can stop to talk, and we can turn to the more connection. Thank you.
Thank you, Seyma. So we ready to engage in a conversation with the folks in the room. Any questions, comments? You're very welcome. Go ahead, Margaret.
So one thing that I've found very remarkable in the past couple days and months, and something that obviously probably comes after the publication of the text that is central, is activism. There actually is a great amount of activism in the Muslim community, as we're seeing from the reaction to what's going on in Gaza. And so I think that really needs to be credited to you all as well, is because heaven knows I'm not the one going out there. And I just recently saw a huge march in Washington over this issue. And I'm shy of those types of events, but to the credit of the Muslim community, I am very impressed with the organization, the activism, and the nonviolence that is being practiced in these kind of demonstrations. Do you want to talk about that piece? Would that be added?
I know Fatima wants to speak to this as well, but I will say that in this issue in particular, I like to see the Muslim population in almost 3 segments over a historical period of time, the Muslim American population in 3 segments. The earliest generation that I look at, and I'm not talking about, you know, I'm not talking pre-Columbus, and I'm not talking about enslaved people. I'm really talking about this first wave of immigrant populations that arrived in the United States. So if we look at the first segment of population over there, the paradigm that most of them were operating in was a paradigm of assimilation and not speaking up, speaking out, acknowledging the graciousness and the benevolence of this country to have made a door in American dreams achievement. So that population's arrival and the kind of the paradigm that they were operating in was, let's not spotlight ourselves, assimilate, make no trouble, no good trouble, no resistance, hang on to faith-based practices in the privacy of your home or in the privacy of the mosque. But it was really not something that was happening in public spaces. The generation after that, and the end of that first generation is kind of when we see the development of Islamic schools and those types of things happen in this country. But the very first Islamic schools were insular schooling experiences, as opposed to, you know, spotlighting the experience. The second generation, which I would say my generation, are the kind of people who engaged a lot in apologetics. And, you know, we are the people who would say, we're so sorry for 9/11, or we're so sorry for any crazy person with any act of violence or a gun or whatever. This generation is the one that will say, anytime something happens, and a statement must be issued to tell the world that we are good people, and this is not happening. In my experience, though, I noticed and I conducted this evidence over the last 12 years, is I would ask our graduating class of 8th grade students how they felt about 9/11. And the timing is important because the last 12 years of graduating 8th graders were all born after 9/11. But anytime you ask them this question, how do you feel about 9/11? 98% of them said they felt guilty. Now, explain to me how a child born in this world after an incident can carry the burden of something that they were not even alive for, right? But this is exactly the burden and the demonization that carries forth. But the generation of people that you're seeing now are the generation of people who are saying, hell no. Like, there is no, like, my father's generation, if you tell them, go back to your country, they'll be like, okay, it's all right for them to tell me to go back to my country because I get it. But if you say that to my child, they're going to be like, where am I supposed to go? Right? Like, what are you talking about? So I think, yeah, Carolyn, that's right. So I think that that piece of it is really important, that there is generational shift is super important. In the case of Palestine, you're also seeing a really large push towards activism that is coming from Muslim women. A lot of this, the organization that's happening, the speakers, the people who are chanting are predominantly going to be women who are leading this, which I think is a very powerful testimony to the matriarchal emphasis within the faith itself, which is never showcased or never represented in mainstream culture, right? So I think that piece of it is really important. What I did in October of last year, at the end of October, I put a call out for participation. And my research, the round that's going on right now is called Political Activism in Educational Settings, the Muslim American Experience. Because every Muslim American at this point is making a very deliberate choice of silence or speaking out. There is a penalty that comes with speaking out, whether it's doxing or whatever else. We've all seen the news. And there's a choice that comes with silencing as well. So every Muslim individual who is in an educational setting or in a workplace or whatever is very deliberately at this point making an intentional choice about how much can they speak or how much should they remain silent. And I think that piece is really important. Like, and this study for me has been incredibly difficult. I've conducted 14 interviews so far, but every interview is like you need 5 days of rest time because of how powerful that conversation has been, because there is so much emotion that folks are carrying and managing, whether it's grief or rage or helplessness, all of those types of things. And the data is, I mean, I hate to say it, the data is rich, but that because of our own positionality, conducting that kind of work is such a different burden to carry as well, right? Because you want to do right by what the participants are saying, and you're completely feeling it as well. I'll pause here because I know that my panelists have a lot to say. Fatima, I did see your hand go up first, so if you can.
Thank you, Dr. Ali. Though you touched on a lot of points that I wanted to talk about. And also, Margaret, thank you for bringing up the topic of activism. My dissertation, one of my strands, is actually focused on spiritual activism that Muslim women on college campuses have been engaging in. They have, before October, I have data that I've collected and interviews that I've done that highlight and indicate that Muslim women have been on college campuses and have been producing activism in terms of interfaith work with engaging other campus organizations in different contexts. And they've been in the forefront of, from my work, I've seen Muslim women at the forefront of doing this work on college campuses, and of course outside of college campuses too, but they have been leading these organizations and doing a lot of the speaking and the advocate work. And I'm glad you brought that up because that's really important, the activism portion of it.
Carolyn, can you take it away from here as well? I just saw your comments in the chat box, and I think there's a lot of stuff you were touching on there.
1,000 points. That's why I try to keep quiet and just write it in the chat. But yes, as she was talking, it just hit on a lot of points. And to answer Margaret's point, what resonated with me is I'm seeing all the activism. The issue with Palestine's been going on for over 75 years. So, but it's never been, I've never seen such a worldwide like outpour of activism, like some of the notes here, of all kinds, not just the marches, but the social media. And I think it's because we're seeing a genocide in real time. We're seeing people, I don't think we've ever seen the world the way we've seen it. Like with the summer of George Floyd's murder, we saw it. It's very different when you see it with your own eyes. And now we're seeing children dying of starvation. And sometimes I have to step away. I have to turn away. It gets to be a lot. We're being, traumatized, just by witnessing it, and feeling helpless to help our own people as part of the Muslim diaspora or as humans, you know. Another note I was thinking as Dr. Ali was talking, now while the immigrant community was very much trying to be like Muslim privately, the Black American community coming out of the Nation of Islam, which may or may not be considered Orthodox Muslims, but going into mainstream Islam with Malcolm X, they were very much part of the Black civil rights movement, and also very active and very vocal. So it was a very different experience. And you know, as a young child, I attended a white church, very quiet. You know, they got up, sang, sat down. But then when I was introduced to Islam, it was through a Black African-American masjid. And that was a community coming out of the Nation of Islam, which I knew nothing about at the time. And I wasn't used to going to even Black churches. So it was a different cultural experience, even though I was half Black. And they're very different culturally. They're very much more outspoken because of that Black civil rights history. They like, I have a right to be Muslim, and they're Muslim out loud, right? They've been Muslim out loud. So I'm coming to Islam that way. And then I had a lot of contact with, quote, as they would refer to the immigrant Muslim population as the foreign-born Muslims. So I had that contact from very early on. I was introduced to Yemeni Muslims, Egyptians, Pakistanis, coming off the East Coast, right? And so I got different, I don't want to say kinds of Islam because Islam is one, but different experiences of Islam from all of my, you know, friends. But that Black American being very vocal, if you ever heard a sermon from a Black imam, it's very much the tones of like a Baptist minister coming out of the South, and they get worked up, and it's very much like listening to, like, you know, if you don't know what a Baptist minister sounds like, Martin Luther King-esque, but maybe even more excited. And so the khutbahs were very different. It's like, can I get a takbir, Allahu Akbar? So like, can I get an amen? So it's very much more animated. So I came to Islam that way. And so having the different perspectives, I think, are going to really add to this work as we go forward. But the Black American experience, and I think it's something like 1 in 3 American-born Muslims are Black Americans, you know. So I think, you know, this is going to be explored from many different aspects, and to see how the Black community really resonates with Palestine and the issues. I mean, that old saying, it takes one to know one. You know, when you've been oppressed, you know what it feels like. You know what apartheid looks like. I mean, the apartheid South of the United States, we don't usually necessarily use that word, we just say segregated, but it was apartheid, right? And we know what that looks like. That's my parents' and grandparents' generation. I heard the stories of not being able to eat at the counter and all that stuff. So, I mean, it's not hard to recognize. I don't know why everybody turns a blind eye. So that, I think, talking about the autoethnography piece, I feel like my feelings get hurt over and over again, because I'm thinking, like, you know, my fellow Americans, how can they not see this? How can we stand with Ukraine and we can't stand with Palestine? How do we line up strollers for the Ukrainian babies and not care about even getting food to babies who are literally starving to death? I mean, all those commercials I grew up with the African babies, they're hungry and they're starving. I'm like, we're causing this. Our tax dollars, I mean, the guilt that you feel as a Muslim in America, as literally our tax dollars going to kill our own people, it just hurts so much in so many different ways. And to see your colleagues and your friends going on like nothing's happening. I mean, you can't be miserable all the time, but it's just sometimes when you're looking at the social media and you just see everybody's having a great time and you're like, but what about the people that, you know? So I kind of live in a kind of sad place sometimes, but you know, you have to kind of bring yourself up out of that. I do teach ethnic studies, so I get to get some of that out there, and every issue comes back to Palestine somehow. And there is a price to pay, so you kind of have to walk that fine line. I live in a very conservative, Republican-dominated county, but you know, the university is kind of that so-called liberal oasis, but there's really no safe place for Muslims, liberal or conservative. So anyway, I kind of go off on a tangent for everything, but I think of her tenet, you know, the tenet of the essentiality of allies, which is one I struggled with initially. I even questioned her, like, well, what do you mean we could do this without them? You know, that's kind of what I was thinking. But if you look at critical race theory and mutual interest convergence, change doesn't happen until they see what we see and come together. So the essentiality of allies is a real thing, whether we like it or not. we have to come together. And let me stop talking for other questions. But
I know there's a hand raised. Go for it. Just unmute
Hi,
and speak
it's
away.
just
Yeah.
Declan. Hi, how are you? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you just
Yeah.
fine.
I have so many questions, but I don't have the time. Really just wanted to say I wasn't going to sit in on this session, and I am so glad I did now. It's a real opportunity. I'm a great believer in trying to listen and understand, and I try to push the business students that I work with. That's the big rant that I have, is about listening and understanding before you form your opinion of, especially of other people. I mean, in Ireland at the moment, we seem to be, we're a small country, but we make our stance on some of the world issues fairly clear fairly quickly, and as a result, we take a lot of heat for that. So the bigger countries tend to come down very hard on us, and we have that in our history. For hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, we were very oppressed. And the only thing I can say to you is that it's only by doing these sort of sessions and keep on writing, and that eventually people will learn to understand, and we can all continue to live together. I mean, I come across it every day. I'm lucky to have many faiths working with me from all over the world, and many students. And after they get to know the way we operate, to be able to say to them, look, let's just sit down, have a cup of tea or a cup of coffee and have a chat and talk about something that maybe we have in common, instead of always picking on the stuff that it makes us different. And then after a while, you can get to talk about the differences, when people start to trust you. I really do. It's a heartfelt comment to wake up every morning knowing that when you or your kids leave your house, the safety of your house, you don't know what abuse they're going to get, and they're going to grow up with that every single day. Having 3 kids myself, I don't know how you do that. I really do not know. So look, I have absolutely no doubt I will find a way to get you to talk to my students in Trinity. It might take me a while, but I certainly on a mission now to get the 4 of you and anybody else to do this sort of session, and I'll get all the students and lecturers in on it just to let you talk for an hour or two. So thanks very much.
We'd love that. Absolutely. Fatima, I know there's a question for you there.
Okay, so hello, Hande. It's good to see you.
Hi, it's good to see you.
I smile your question. I mean, I do like those series, to be honest, because I feel like, so I want to read one more time your question, but I feel like every person has different experience as a Muslim. And in the beginning of the time, like I can say maybe 10 years ago or so, I could say that it's like kind of like overseeing the things. It's not like Muslim women oppressed or like need to be saved or something. But in these days, I can say that there's a lot of stories. Like we can accept like the Malala, it is the real story, and she has been suffering. And on the other hand, our story is also real. And I like those TV series because it's showing some realities, and I can accept that it's been written mostly the secular sides of Muslims, but it has also some clues that it's real. But on the other hand, it's like kind of showing the one story of Muslim part. I cannot say that it is not happening because I know that it's been happening, but it is one side of Muslim community. Like it's the verses, it's like one story of the secular Muslim stories too. But I watch them and I like it, but I feel like it's kind of getting worse, especially in Kızılcık Şerbeti, because in the beginning it was more fun and joy, but in Kızıl Goncalar it's like kind of wow, it's more
I
like
agree.
lots of big discussions, and I do like it. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I agree. And do you know about Ödüller by Elif Eda? I'm gonna put it on the chat.
I think
It's
I've heard the name, but I didn't watch it.
okay. I'll just put it in the chat. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's good to see some Turkish people here.
I know that we are at time. So thank you all for joining us today for our panel. We've put our email addresses in the chat for anyone who would like to reach out or connect. I know that all of us are on LinkedIn and other social media outlets as well. So thank you all for making time this afternoon to hear us out.